Hi guys, and welcome to my top 5 Wii hidden gems. Let's Tap is a really quirky game, to be honest. I've never seen anything like it. You actually have a box that you put on your lap or on a table or something, and you put your Wii remotes on it and actually tap the boxes to move the Wii remotes and actually control the characters on screen. It's quite a sort of strange game. But there's a few different levels. There's this running level you see here, which I am terrible at, as you can probably tell. But you double tap to jump, and then you run very fast if you can. The controls are kind of strange. There's a rhythm section which plays quite well, but the controls are quite strange, quite difficult sometimes to judge when you're double tapping or just single tapping. But it's worth a go. It's one of the Wii's quirky games. It really does something new and different. That probably won't be seen again, and you're probably not going to find it with the box controller anywhere in a few years. I mean, you'll find it now, but those box controllers are going to get destroyed. There's another level here where it's sort of like Jenga, and you pull out different blocks, try to make multiples of 3, and they disappear after that. It's not the best game, but it's definitely something that people might have missed. They need to check it out, really. It's worth your time. It really is, because you can find it for a really low price. Complete box, perfect condition. And, it's quirky. And if you like quirky, different games that not everyone will have picked up, games that may possibly even end up being rare in their complete condition in a few years, then I would definitely recommend it. This is probably the highlight of the game here. The sort of flying along, tapping to keep yourself up in there, and also double tapping for missiles. It's a quirky little game. None of it's completely polished. They're all sort of mini games, but there's only about 5 or 6 mini games. But as you see here, I'm not great at this game, but definitely worth a punt if you see it anywhere. The sound kind of goes crazy at points, but it's all kind of constructed very well. It's by Sega, so it's got this whole kind of res thing going on behind it. It does kind of remind me of Res, the graphic style on this. There's lots to see, really, lots to do. And if you've got a few friends, it comes with a couple of boxes, so you can play together. You can play up to 4-player. I think it works on a table as well. But what I found quite difficult was the box. I found it quite hard to register whether I was tapping once or tapping twice, which can be a real problem. I mean, this is the visualizer mode, which really, there's not much to it. It's sort of like Fantavision on the PS2, if you've ever seen that, but not really anything worth getting on. It's kind of tacked on to be included. A Shadow's Tale is another interesting game, which is a real new mechanic that I've not seen before, of essentially you control this little character in the background who is a shadow, devoid of its body. So its body has been chopped. A knight chops his shadow from its body, and you play basically on any shadow you can find. It becomes platforms, which is a really strange setup that takes a while to get used to not look at the platforms in front. But actually, it's really eye-catching, and I really found it reminded me of Eco and Shadow of the Colossus in art style and tone. And you're not pushed along through the story too much. It's kind of unfolding. It's another one of those where you're not really sure what's happening. You know what's happened at the start, but you go to a tower and you find out these things that aren't spoon-fed to you like other games would do. There's great puzzles, like you have to use this little fairy, which is the pointer of the Wii remote, to adapt your environment to create new shadows so you can climb on them, which really made me really impressed with the fascinating concept that they've done there. And ultimately, I liked it. I really did like it. I thought it becomes monotonous after a while. There are things that you do again and again and again, but there's some really great mechanics in this. There's a world-turning mechanic, which is a bit like Fez on the PC and XBLA, etc. But it's something that really, really appealed to me. I love the art style, I love the gameplay mechanics, and it really keeps you playing. A little bit later into the game, you pick up a sword, and so you can have there are enemies to fight with and kill. And the sword mechanics aren't great. The hit detection, hitboxes are a little small. I mean, the sword is quite short, so it can be a bit of a problem doing some of the battles, but nothing that you can't get used to. And whilst it's not the best game ever made, it really is so charming that how could you ignore it? I mean, look how beautiful it is. Some of the platforms get in the way of you being able to see the shadows, which is a slight problem with the game, but it sticks with its premise and it keeps going. Later on there are some 3D sections where you become solid for a little bit, so that's, there are different elements to the gameplay. It's not all one-sided, just twist the things and jump on the platforms. There's lots of things you can do. You go into these shadow gates, which become more difficult levels, where you have to spin the environment and figure out how to get to that shadow door. So it just really does mix up the gameplay quite well. This game was known as Lost in Shadow in America, and I think it had quite a low print run, so it's definitely one to check out whenever you find it. Metal Slug Anthology is a collection of the Metal Slug games I think quite a lot of people slept on. These are classic SNK Neo Geo games. It's got Metal Slug 1, 2, X, 3, 4, 5 and 6 on there, plus a couple of extra interviews and things like that. But if you've not played Metal Slug before, you really are missing out. It's essentially a cartoony version of, say, something like Contra, and you're just this little guy who needs to shoot everything in sight to progress and rescue the prisoners. And you throw bombs at everything. It's huge, it's cartoony, it's been going for years and years and years, and if you've missed it, you've really missed out, because there's so much fun to be had with this. There's so much stuff on the screen at once, everything's going on, and you'll die 1,000 times, but really you won't care every time you do. It's really, really, really fun. There's 7 games here for the price of 1. It got slept on quite a bit because this anthology's been on the PSP, it's been on the PS2. Obviously all these games are on the old Neo Geo system, but they go for a lot of money, old Metal Slugs on the original AES system. So this is a really cheap and easy way to figure these out and to see if you like them or not before maybe playing more. There are a few problems with it. The presentation's not great, there's not much more than the actual games themselves, and the control scheme is okay, but ultimately you can't use the classic controller, which is the main letdown of this. You have to use either the Wii and nunchuck, remote and nunchuck, or a GameCube controller, which GameCube controller is probably the best way to play this game. There's no real point playing it, I don't think, with the Wii nunchuck. It's okay, but it kind of takes some real getting used to, and this is quite a twitchy kind of game that you're really going to want to play with a controller that does it justice. If you can find another player to play with you, this game really comes into its own. It's a really fun 2-player experience and really puts a smile on your face. It's just an old arcade kind of game, and really, sometimes that's all you want. Sometimes you want a straight up arcade game with no messing around. You get huge ridiculous bosses like this, cartoon villains that are essentially Nazis and Russians and things like that. It's not the most politically correct of games, but it's an awesome lot of fun, and not much more fun can be had for your money when you imagine how many games are here. A must for old school gamers. A Boy and His Blob. This is a really good remake of an old NES game, I think. And you basically, there's an outer space blob from this jellybean planet who manages to crash land on Earth, and you play the little boy that finds him, and together you go through all these various different levels using the jellybean mechanic, which is jelly beans are what he likes to eat, and the jelly beans correspond to different things that he's going to change into or do. Like, it will just show you quite a few on this intro here, and there's loads and loads of levels in this game, and it's a really, really well made, well put together game with some quite interesting puzzles, quite difficult puzzles actually in some states, and some really well drawn enemies. The enemies, I mean, this is the intro cutscene, but the enemies really do look this good in the final game when you play them. And it's got a quite an easy difficulty curve. It kind of really brings you into it in quite a nice way, where you are eased into it, and the levels start with just being flat terrains, music go left to right as you do normally in any kind of platform. When they become much more difficult with branching paths and things to find and different puzzles to negotiate. If you can see there, we just throw a jelly bean and it forms a hole so you can fall down through the environment. There's a few different puzzles. I think this one at the moment shows where this yellow duck here on the side, it means you can't throw any jelly beans. It just comes and eats them. But there is a way, if you throw them to the left, he will actually destroy those mine. They look like Pokemon, to be honest. But yeah, there's different things you can do. You can be jacks. You can be bowling balls. You can form holes. You can form rockets. All kinds of things really make this game kind of interesting. It's not without its flaws. There's supposed to be a jelly bean which allows you to become the balloon like this, but really it's obsolete because it will happen if you go too far or just call him and he can't get up from somewhere. So it feels like they sort of had a problem during playtesting and sorted that out with a bit of a cop-out. But there's a lot of game here, and it's a really interesting, cute little remake of an old game that I think people who love retro games will definitely be interested in. This is Endless Ocean, and just decided to end on a bit more of a relaxing game. I would struggle to call much of this a game, but essentially it's a diving simulator. I think there were a couple of these on the PS1 and PS2. Really, it's essentially you very slowly work your way around an underwater environment, finding fish and other life, and sort of learning about it. And you can spend hours just drifting around. I mean, this is just the most relaxing game I think I've ever played. Not really much in the way of things to do, but it's much more about cruising around, seeing what's there, and just relaxing, enjoying yourself. I mean, it's beautiful looking. There's hundreds of different types of fish to interact with, but this game was never designed to be exciting. It's got all kinds of things where you end up on the ship and you're just walking around the ship looking at emails, sitting on the deck. I mean, I'm making it possibly sound terrible, but it really is something that quite a few people will like if they like kind of nice, relaxing, not necessarily action-packed games. It's about exploration and really just about enjoying the views and maybe learning a bit about things underwater, but that's not the main thrust of the game. The main thrust of the game is just to relax. See here, we go onto the boat, we answer our emails, which is how you progress in the game as you do certain different tasks for these different organisations. And whilst there is a very slow pace to it, it's just something to break up the monotony. It's something you don't see every day. It's something that not every game has. It's not aiming to blow your socks off every 5 minutes. It's just aiming to be a nice game, and I don't think this really sold very well. It did get a sequel, but when you can just sit on a deck chair and stare out into the sunset and or just look out over the water, what more do you need? So there you have it, 5 Wii games you may not have seen before. Like, comment and subscribe. Goodbye.